This night had been on the calendar for weeks. Mariana and Lucas were celebrating their first wedding anniversary, and as their best friend, I was excited to be part of it. We had always had the same friend group, so going out together wasn't unusual. It was supposed to be just another night at the club, filled with drinks, laughter, and memories. Mariana and I had been inseparable since childhood. We grew up together, shared everything, and supported each other through every phase of life. When she met Lucas in high school, I was the one who introduced them. At that time, Lucas and I had already broken up, but it had been amicable. We had decided to stay friends, and when he and Mariana hit it off, I encouraged it. I told myself it didn't bother me. After all, our relationship was in the past. As the night approached, I was genuinely looking forward to it. Mariana was thrilled about celebrating with all of us, and Lucas, as usual, was playing the role of the devoted husband. Everything seemed perfect. But then, a few days before the event, I got an unexpected text from him. At first, it was harmless. He asked how I was, if I was excited about the night out. It didn't seem like anything unusual. Lucas and I had always been friendly, and Mariana trusted me completely. But then his messages took a different turn. He started bringing up our past, reminiscing about when we were together. I laughed it off at first. "That was a lifetime ago," I replied, trying to brush it away. But deep down, a part of me couldn't deny that I still found him attractive. Maybe I had never really let go of those feelings, even after all these years. Then, he sent another message. "I can't wait to see what you're going to wear." I hesitated for a moment. My heart raced, and for some reason, I didn't stop myself when I sent back a single winking emoji before saying goodnight. The next morning, I woke up with my phone still in my hand. My last message to Lucas, a simple winking emoji, stared back at me. I hesitated before unlocking my phone, wondering if he had responded. He had. "Sleep well?" A normal question, harmless. But suddenly, it didn't feel that way. I typed out a quick, "Yeah, you?" and forced myself to put the phone down. I told myself not to overthink it. Lucas was just being friendly, right? But the messages kept coming. Throughout the day, he found small excuses to text me, asking how work was going, sending inside jokes from years ago, reminding me of things we used to do together. It was so subtle that it didn't feel wrong, but I knew it wasn't normal. Then, he brought up our past again. "You know, we were good together," he said. Crazy to think how things turned out. I stared at the message for a long time. It was true. We had been good together. Back then, things were simple. We laughed a lot, we understood each other, but it had ended, and for a reason. I reminded myself of that as I typed my reply. Yeah, we had fun, but that was forever ago. I should have stopped there, but I didn't. Instead, I let myself get caught up in the nostalgia. I let him lead the conversation, bringing up old memories, old feelings. And when he asked me if I had ever thought about us, about what could have been, I hesitated. Had I? Of course I had. I had buried it deep down, ignored it for years. But now, with him pulling it back to the surface, I couldn't deny it. Then came the message that made my stomach twist. "I really can't wait to see you this weekend. I want to see how much you've changed, and how much you haven't." I knew what he was doing. And worse, I liked it. I told myself it was just harmless flirting. A little fun. Nothing would happen. But as the night out got closer, I found myself thinking about Lucas more than I should have. I paid extra attention while picking out my outfit, choosing something that hugged my curves just right. I even spent longer on my makeup, making sure everything was perfect. I hated how much I cared. The text continued, growing bolder. Lucas never said anything outright, but the undertones were clear. "I bet you'll be the best dressed one there," he wrote the night before the party. "I always loved the way you looked." I stared at the message for a while before replying. I knew I shouldn't encourage it. But something in me craved the attention. The desire I had buried for years was bubbling up, and I wasn't stopping it. "We'll see," I finally replied, adding a teasing, winky face. The next evening, as I slipped into my dress, I felt a rush of adrenaline. I told myself it was excitement for the night, for celebrating Mariana and Lucas's anniversary. But deep down, I knew the truth. I was excited to see him. When I arrived at the club, my heart was pounding. Mariana greeted me with a tight hug, her eyes sparkling with happiness. She was glowing, completely unaware of the storm brewing right next to her. Lucas stood behind her, watching me. The moment our eyes met, I felt it. The shift. The silent acknowledgement that we both knew exactly what we were doing. "You look amazing," he said, his voice low enough that only I could hear. I smiled, pretending his words didn't make my skin burn. I played it cool, laughing and drinking with our friends as if nothing was happening. But every time Lucas brushed past me, every time his hand lingered just a second too long, my resolve weakened. The night had just begun, but I already knew this wasn't going to be just another night out. The club was packed, music pulsing through the walls as drinks flowed freely. Mariana was in her element, dancing with Lucas, her arms draped around his neck, her laughter echoing through the crowd. Everyone around us was having fun, lost in the celebration. But I couldn't focus. I tried. I really did. I danced with our friends, threw my head back in laughter, let the alcohol warm my body. But every time I looked at them, at him, something inside me twisted. I hated that I felt this way. Hated that I let jealousy creep in when Mariana had done nothing wrong. She was my best friend. I had introduced her to Lucas. This was my fault. And yet, the more I drank, the harder it became to suppress that bitterness. At one point, Mariana pulled me into a hug, swaying to the music. "I'm so glad you're here," she said, her voice slightly slurred. "You're my sister, you know that?" Guilt stabbed through me, sharp and unforgiving. I forced a smile, nodding as I hugged her back. Lucas was watching me. When Mariana turned away, he leaned in close. His breath brushed against my ear, sending a shiver down my spine. "You okay?" he murmured. I nodded quickly, stepping back. "Yeah, just drunk. I can tell." There was amusement in his voice, but something else too. Something dark, something knowing. I should have walked away. I should have put distance between us. But I didn't. Instead, I drowned my guilt in more drinks, ignoring the way my body reacted every time he was near. By the end of the night, I was too drunk to get home alone. I fumbled with my phone, trying to order a ride, but my fingers wouldn't cooperate. "I'll take her," Lucas said, his voice steady. Mariana beamed at him. "You're the best, babe." She kissed him, completely trusting. And just like that, I ended up in Lucas's car, heading toward my apartment. The city lights blurred past as I leaned my head against the cool window of Lucas's car. The alcohol still pulsed through my veins, dulling my thoughts, but not enough to erase the weight in my chest. "You okay?" Lucas asked, his voice smooth and steady. "Yeah, just drunk," I mumbled, closing my eyes for a moment. I figured. Silence settled between us, heavy and unspoken. The hum of the engine filled the space, but I could feel his eyes flickering toward me every so often. "You know," he said after a beat, "you didn't have to drink that much." I let out a dry laugh. Trust me, I did. He didn't push, just kept driving. But the air between us crackled, tense and electric. When we pulled up to my apartment, I fumbled with the door handle, my movements sluggish. Lucas sighed. "Come on, let me walk you up. Mariana would kill me if I just left you like this." I should have said no, but I didn't. I nodded, and he got out, coming around to help me. His hand found my waist as he guided me toward the entrance. The touch was firm, grounding, but it lingered longer than it should have. And I didn't pull away. The elevator ride was silent, too much, too loud. My heart pounded in my ears. When we reached my door, I turned to him, forcing a smile. "Thanks for making sure I got home." Lucas hesitated. "Mind if I come in for a bit? Just until you sober up?" I should have said no, but I stepped aside, letting him in. Inside, the air felt different, thicker, charged. I kicked off my heels, my head still spinning from the alcohol. Lucas followed me in, his presence unnervingly natural in my space. "You should eat something," he said, heading toward my kitchen like he had been here 100 times before. He rummaged through my fridge, pulling out leftovers and heating them up. I leaned against the counter, watching him. This should have felt wrong, but it didn't. Not yet. We sat together, eating in silence, the tension between us growing heavier with every passing second. Every glance, every accidental brush of skin sent a spark through me. "You always did love midnight snacks," he said with a small smirk. "And you always took care of me," I murmured without thinking. He paused, eyes locked on mine. The room suddenly felt too quiet, too intimate. My breath hitched. He was still watching me when he finally stood, stretching as if to shake off whatever was lingering between us. "I should go," he said, his voice lower now. I nodded, standing with him. We walked to the door together, but as I reached for the handle, he hesitated. Then, before I could process it, his hand was on my waist, his touch deliberate. My body reacted instantly, leaning into him as if on instinct. I looked up. Our faces were inches apart. "We shouldn't," I whispered, but my voice lacked conviction. He didn't answer. He didn't need to, because then he leaned in, and I let him. The moment our lips met, everything I had buried for years erupted to the surface. I should have pushed him away. I should have thought about Mariana. But instead, I pulled him inside, shutting the door behind us. The second the door clicked shut, there was no turning back. His hands were on me, my fingers tangled in his hair, and the years of restraint shattered in an instant. I knew it was wrong, but it didn't feel wrong, not in that moment. We barely made it to my bedroom. Clothes hit the floor, breaths tangled, and every unspoken thought, every buried desire came rushing to the surface. It wasn't slow. It wasn't hesitant. It was desperate, reckless, like something that had been waiting too long to happen. When it was over, I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my heartbeat still erratic. Lucas was beside me, silent, his breathing steady. Reality crept in, wrapping around me like a vice. "We shouldn't have done that," I murmured. He turned his head to look at me. "Maybe." His expression was unreadable. I expected him to leave immediately, but he didn't. He stayed, his fingers absent-mindedly tracing circles on my skin. It felt natural, dangerously so. Eventually, he got up, started dressing. I watched him, unsure of what to say. "This stays between us," he finally said, glancing at me as he buttoned his shirt. A lump formed in my throat. "Yeah." He nodded, then leaned down, pressing one last kiss to my lips before slipping out the door. The second I was alone, the weight of what we had done crashed down on me. I had just betrayed my best friend, and I wasn't even sure I regretted it. The morning after, I expected guilt to crush me, to make it impossible to look at myself in the mirror. But it didn't. Instead, I found myself replaying every moment, every touch, every whispered breath. I told myself it was a mistake, a one-time thing. But deep down, I knew better. The next day, Lucas texted me. "Last night, I can't stop thinking about it." Neither could I. One message turned into another, then another, and before I knew it, we were meeting again. The secrecy, the risk, it made everything more intense. We told ourselves it wasn't real, that it was just something we had to get out of our systems. But if that were true, why couldn't we stop? Each time, the guilt came a little stronger. but so did the desire. I avoided Mariana more than usual, making excuses when she asked to hang out. I couldn't sit across from her and pretend nothing was happening. Lucas, on the other hand, seemed completely in control. He was still the perfect husband, still affectionate, still present. If he felt guilty, he didn't show it, and that scared me. "Do you ever think about telling her?" I asked one night, as we lay tangled in my sheets. He exhaled slowly. "Some people are better off not knowing. I should have ended it then. But instead, I let him pull me back into his arms, knowing that this was spiraling into something neither of us could undo. It was bound to happen. Mariana and I hadn't spent time together in weeks, and when we finally did, I could feel the shift. She wasn't as bubbly, not as carefree. Something was weighing on her. We were sitting in her living room when she finally sighed, setting her phone down. "Lucas has been acting weird." My stomach clenched. Weird how? Distant, secretive. He changed the password on his phone. She shook her head, frustration laced in her voice. "He never does that." I forced a casual laugh. "Mar, come on. He's probably just stressed. Everyone deserves some privacy, even in a marriage." She looked at me, searching my face. "You don't think it's suspicious?" I shrugged, keeping my expression neutral, even though my pulse was hammering. "I think you're overthinking it." Mariana sighed again, rubbing her temples. "Maybe you're right. I don't know. It's like something's changed, but I can't put my finger on it." I swallowed hard, nodding, pretending like I wasn't the reason for the change. She leaned back, closing her eyes. "I don't know what I'd do if he ever cheated on me." The words stabbed through me. "He wouldn't," I said quickly. She gave me a weak smile. "Yeah, he wouldn't." I smiled back, forcing myself to hold it. I had never lied to her before, but now every word felt like a betrayal. The weight of it all was suffocating me. I spent every waking moment tangled in guilt, replaying the lies, the stolen moments, the way Mariana looked at me with complete trust. Trust I no longer deserved. I knew what I had to do, but I didn't want to do it. Lucas made it easy to keep the secret. He was calm, convincing. Every time I brought up telling Mariana, he would shake his head. "Why would you ruin her life over a mistake?" "A mistake?" I repeated bitterly. "Is that what this is? What else would you call it?" His voice was steady, his face unreadable. "It happened. We can't change that. But telling her? That's selfish. You'd only be doing it to ease your own guilt, not to help her." I hated that he made sense, but I also hated myself for letting it happen. That night, I stared at my phone for hours, my finger hovering over Mariana's contact. I could still hear her voice in my head. I don't know what I'd do if he ever cheated on me. I wanted to be the kind of person who did the right thing. But was the right thing telling her? Or was it walking away, letting her keep the life she thought she had? I still don't know the answer. All I know is that I made one of the biggest mistakes of my life. So tell me, am I the asshole?